UFC Perth just finished, where Carlos Ulberg put on a masterclass and dismantled Dominic Reyes within 4 minutes of their light heavyweight main event. In my eyes, he is the next title challenger against the winner of Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira, which goes down next weekend. Carlos Ulberg put on a show today. He looked like prime Israel Adesanya out there. That was a brutal KO. And in this video, we're going to speak about every single, maybe not every single fight, but every single talking point on the entire card. And you can scroll along with me because I'll bring my screen up right now to the right of me. You can see it. And we're going to go through the entire fight card. So, man, what a decent fight card we had out there in UFC Perth, Australia. One of the first thing that comes to mind is, man, all these Aussies won. All these Aussies won. All these Kiwis won. And we're going to speak about it, man. But I think the first fight we have to speak about is pretty clear. It's Dominic Reyes and Carlos Ulberg. The main event of the evening. Something that I thought was quite interesting is if you look here, the KO is recorded as a jab and right cross. And, you know, not too long ago, Dominic Reyes was also finished by another jab by Ryan Spann. So, you know, this guy's getting put out by jabs these days. And a lot of people going into that fight thought that Dominic Reyes was on a resurgence, thought that he was a new man, thought that it was Dominic Reyes 2.0. But those of us who actually study the sport, those of us who actually gamble on the sport professionally, most of us, not everybody, believe that that wasn't the case and that Carlos Ulberg was actually going to smoke him in this fight, including myself. We smashed Carlos Ulberg money line, and we cashed on Carlos Ulberg money line. It was another cash, boys. And you could probably tell I'm on an absolute hype right now because I'm trying to keep it cool. We're on a 7-week win streak. We haven't lost in 7 weeks. We haven't lost a week in 7 weeks now. The entire year has been absolutely crazy. Dominic Reyes got dominated, but Carlos Ulberg money line, you can see we bet him right here. Let's have a look. Let's have a little zoom in. Carlos Ulberg, 3-unit bet, and it cashed with ease. It brought us back 1.82 units, 3.6K for myself, 3.6 thousand in 4 minutes. Honestly, did Carlos Ulberg outperform my expectations? Even though I was one of the guys who bet on him, you know, so I was expecting him to win and I was expecting him to look good. No, he didn't outperform my expectations. You know, he performed extremely well, but honestly, he didn't outperform my expectations. I expected him to look a level above Dominic Reyes in the striking here. I expected him to look a level above in the distance control, the range management. Did I expect him to not get hit at all and land a 4-minute knockout? No. I expected him to get hit maybe once or twice and land a second round KO. But honestly, it wasn't that far away from my expectation. But I don't want to take anything away from Carlos Ulberg. I just felt like I had a very good read on that fight. But I don't think most people on the planet expected Carlos Ulberg to get a round 1 knockout and took no punishment. Not 1 punishment, not 2 punishment, you know, but 0 punishment. I don't think a lot of people expected that, you know. I truly don't. And I'm going to go over to UFC stats now. And we're going to take a look and we're going to see if Dominic Reyes actually landed a shot, because I was watching it live, boys, and I didn't think Dominic Reyes landed a shot. As you're listening along with me to this, please let me know, you know, telepathically. Did Dominic Reyes land a punch? Did Dominic Reyes land a punch in that one, boys? Because, you know, I don't necessarily think he did. You know, I don't think he did land a punch. Let's have a look at this, boys. So we're going to zoom in here, right? So it says that Dominic Reyes landed 5 strikes while Ulberg landed 11. Now, if we zoom in, it says Dominic Reyes landed 5 strikes and Ulberg landed 17. Or he landed 11. I don't know if that was correct. I mean, I'm sure a leg kick landed or something like that. But to me, Dominic Reyes landed nothing. And at the end of the day, a leg kick landing, a jab landing, doesn't necessarily mean it actually landed properly, doesn't mean it landed flush, doesn't mean it actually did anything. You know, he didn't land any significant strike, I'll say that. Even though the UFC is counting 5 significant strikes. I mean, me and you both watched the fight. Dominic Reyes didn't land a shot on Carlos Ulberg and he cleaned him out. You know, Carlos Ulberg is next in line for a title shot now. You know, it's pretty clear to me. Carlos Ulberg, the Black Jag, is next in line for a title shot. And one of my friends, Dravi, said what I said earlier, and he said that he looked like prime Izzy out there, and I just thought that was a great comparison because he did look like prime Izzy out there. He's coming out of that city kickboxing camp, which is the same camp as Israel Adesanya, and he looked like prime Israel Adesanya. He created dead space, dead traps in the octagon, and we saw Dominic Reyes did not know what to do. You know, he was out of range with all of his shots. Every jab he threw came short. Every leg kick he threw, Carlos Ulberg would just step back, look down like, you ain't going to leg kick me, fool, and then come back with his own 1-2 or come back with his own leg kick. And basically everything that Ulberg landed, everything that Ulberg threw landed, and everything that Ulberg tried to evade, he evaded. You know, that was a brilliant performance. The performance before against Jan Blachowicz, and you can see his record up now right in front of me. While a lot of people criticize that record, if we're actually honest about that fight, Jan Blachowicz is one of the best strikers in the division. So much so that he dominated Dominic Reyes on the feet. So much so that he was a champion. You know, he actually became a champion. Let me stretch this one out here. Let's move this one over here. He actually became a champion, right? Due to striking. And Dominic Reyes was dominated by Jan Blachowicz. And in my opinion, Carlos Ulberg just beat him worse. Carlos Ulberg just beat him worse than he was ever beat before. So, like, Dominic Reyes has never been treated like that. He got dominated by Jan Blachowicz, you know, but he did have some moments. Like, he landed a couple of shots. Ryan Spann knocked him out in a minute, but not much happened before that. You know, it was basically just a minute fight. John Jones, that was a very close fight. Jiri Prochazka was a war. It was like a 50-50 fight until the knockout. Carlos Ulberg beat him up for 4 minutes. Just didn't do major damage. Just made it look easy. Just outclassed him. I'd say Dominic Reyes was beat probably just as bad by Jan as Carlos Ulberg. You know, both of those guys probably had the best performance that anyone has ever had over Dominic Reyes. So yeah, I mean, who else are we going to give the title shot, boys? Next week, we got 2 major light heavyweight fights, right? And I'll bring them up for you now. So next week, we have Khalil Roundtree versus Jiri Prochazka. Who do you guys think is going to win that one? Let me know. Let me know who you guys think is going to win that one. Jiri Prochazka versus Dominic Reyes. And then, Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Roundtree. And then in the same card, we have the rematch. Magomed Ankalaev versus... here we go, watch. Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira. And I think you have to not give the fight to Jiri or Khalil, because at the end of the day, man, they've already fought for a title. You know, both Jiri and Khalil have fought for a title. So are you really going to give them the title shot again? Sorry, it's jump closed here. Are you really going to give them the title shot again? I don't think so. Yeah, I think clearly, you give the title shot to... what the fuck's happening here? But yeah, clearly you give the title shot to... sorry, boys, technical issues. Clearly you give the title shot to Carlos Ulberg. I mean, I don't think anyone would necessarily argue against that. Would you argue against that? Who can argue against that? No one can argue against that shit. Boys, why is this going crazy like this? I don't really know what's happening. I think next week, Khalil Roundtree versus Jiri Prochazka is going to be a great fight. And I guess if Jiri comes out there and just completely dominates the fight, maybe you could give him the fight. You know, maybe. But man, I think that would be a little bit harsh on somebody like Carlos Ulberg, who has just put himself at the forefront of the title shot. Like, I don't think you can bypass him. Jiri not only had 1 shot, but he's had 2 shots now. You know, Jiri has had 2 shots at the title. Are you really going to give him another shot? And to be honest, Khalil might even knock him out next week. Who knows? I'll have my full card breakdown out in a couple of days. I'll have my main card breakdown out tomorrow. So make sure you're tuned into this channel. Sign up, subscribe, tune in, and you will see my prediction on that one, because I've already taped that fight. And actually, I feel like I have a good prediction on that fight. But yeah, I'm down to see Carlos Ulberg fight Ankalaev. And let me tell you now, I think he's got a chance of winning that fight. And I think we might see a new light heavyweight champion in Carlos Ulberg. The co-main event, it wasn't a great co-main event, you know, just in terms of like the quality of co-main event, but we got Jimmy Crute against Ivan Erslan. So that was an interesting fight, you know. Jimmy Crute ended up taking him down and submitting him in round one. And I bet on Ivan Erslan in that fight. It was the only loss of the night for me on a fight. The only time I lost on any fight. So yeah, it was kind of frustrating. But when you only have one loss on a night, you don't really care. And like I always said, boys, I'm a professional sports bettor, right? I'm not one of these guys who are trying to fraud and tell you, you know, they never lose or something like that. I'm a professional, means I lose a lot. I win a lot, but I lose a lot. It's up and down, right? But it's way more up, right? And I'm going to show you my record here. I mean, look at this, boys. We're on a crazy win streak. We got 29% ROI, 10K I won on the UFC today, right? We had Carlos Ulberg. We had Ivan Erslan, as I told you there. We had Navajo Stirling. We had Brando Perisic. We had a couple of long shots. Erslan decision, Tainara submission, Montague submission, but we still won on those fights because we parlayed the money lines. Tainara and Montague. Also, Brando Perisic, the Balkan Bear, my guy, to win in round one at plus 170 odds. On the same day, we destroyed PFL Mena with 9.7 units of profit, 19K profit on PFL Mena, 10.6K and 19.4K, right? Do you know how much that adds up to? 30K. 30K profit for myself betting on MMA on one day. And it was actually a little bit more than that because we cashed Parlay Madness tickets, and I cashed some of my long shot parlays, which I send out to everyone in my VIP. So it was actually a 40K day for me today. Overall, over everything, couple of live bets I hit. Man, it was an unreal day. And if we scroll down, PFL Mena, PFL Europe, we won. We won on that too, slightly, 0.13 units. Contender Series, we won here. Look at all this green, boys. That's 4 winning events in a row. Look at this one. That's another win. That's 5 winning events in a row. That's green. Look at the UFC last week. UFC last week, we crushed it. 2.9 units of profit, 5.8K. Look at the Contender Series before that, 3.13 units of profit. Look at the UFC before that. It's green again. It's 12.66 units of profit. Insane cash. 25K on one UFC card. Look, we scroll down again. 2.57 units of profit. We scroll down again. 1 unit of profit. I mean, this is back in August, boys. This is back in August. The next UFC event is in October. And this is back in August and we're cashing. If you want to join my VIP and do all of this with the boys and cash real money, and get picks from a professional sports bettor like myself, not a fan who picks, then you can click the link in my bio. That's sublaunch.com/lucrative MMA. We're on one of the craziest runs I've ever been on, man. You could probably tell I'm hyped, boys. I'm trying to keep myself unemotional, you know, because the psychology behind sports betting is the toughest part. And if you really want to profit, it's all about keeping your emotions in check, win or lose. But when you've been winning for the entire 9 months, when you're cashing, I've won $40,000 of profit today, boys. That's like that's a lot of people's yearly salary, you know. So it's very hard for me to be unemotional when I've won a yearly salary in a couple of hours, right? But I'm doing my best. So yeah, speaking of the Jimmy Crute Ivan Erslan fight, I think Navajo Stirling wants to fight Jimmy Crute. That's what I hear through the grapevine. I think there may be some bad blood there. I ain't going to speak too much out of turn. That's just what I hear through the grapevine, being in New Zealand myself. And yeah, I would like to see Jimmy Crute versus Navajo Stirling. I think that's a good fight. And we're going to speak about Navajo Stirling soon. Ivan Erslan, now he's 0-3 in the promotion. I think you have to sack him. You know, you got to get his walk-in papers. You're 0-3. It's not like they gave him easy fights. They gave him Ion Cutelaba. They gave him Jimmy Crute. They gave him Navajo Stirling. They're not easy fights, but they're not the top of the division either. You know what I mean? I mean, is anyone even ranked? I think Jimmy Crute may be, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, you're 0-3 in the light heavyweight. I think Ivan Erslan can get UFC wins, by the way. Like, he almost beat Ion Cutelaba. And if the fight gets out of round 1, obviously, you know, it's going to turn into a very close fight. Maybe even I would favor Erslan there because Jimmy Crute after round 1 never performs very well and he always looks like the underdog. But at the end of the day, man, facts are facts, and the facts are you're 0-3 in the promotion. You probably deserve your walk-in papers at this point. And like I said, man, Jimmy Crute's on a bit of a run now, 2-fight win streak. So I'd like to see him fight Navajo Stirling next. I think that's a great test for Navajo. I think that's a tough fight for Navajo. because Jimmy Crute in round one he could beat anyone, you know, because he can take anyone down, and he's got very, very good jiu-jitsu. The submission he had, I mean, they're calling that a rear naked choke, but to be honest, I ain't gonna call that a rear naked choke. That was some weird shit. It was basically a can opener from the other side. So he got his chin from behind and just ripped his chin up. It wasn't a rear naked choke because nothing was being choked. It was more of a pain submission, just like cranking his neck. It was basically a neck crank. It was like a can opener, which you do from the topper. So a can opener is when you're on top of the guy, right? In mount or whatever. You're on top of them. You grab behind their head. So imagine this mic is the guy's head, right? You grab behind their head like that, and then you pull it up, right? So you kind of like pull them up. So you put their hand behind their head and then you pull. So you're kind of trying to pull so much where their head is getting pressure, they end up tapping. It was similar to that. Instead of hands behind the head, it was hands underneath the chin. And he kind of just like pulled him up, although I think his hands were connected, you know, some type of grip. So I ain't calling that a rear naked choke because it wasn't a choke. You know, it was just a rear naked pull. You want to call that a rear? I mean, it was rear. It was naked, pause. And it was more of a pull. So that was a rear naked pull by Jimmy Crute. Round one submission. I mean, he got a round one submission in his last fight. So he's a high level submission fighter. But if you can avoid that, he just doesn't look that great. I think Navajo Stirling versus Jimmy Crute would be epic. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that because I really think that's a very good fight. The next fight, we had Jack Jenkins and Ramon Tavares. Boys, I don't really want to talk about that. I ain't got much to talk about in that one. Like, yeah, Jack Jenkins hit him with a good... I like Jack Jenkins, by the way. He's a horse racing gambler, which I found out today. So that's my man, Jack Jenkins. You know, he's one of us. I'm going to love Jack Jenkins for the rest of his career now. But it's not an eventful fight that I necessarily want to talk about. What I do want to talk about is Neil Magny versus Jake Matthews. Boy, oh boy. I had a tweet... and I get the tweet up for you right now, but I posted a tweet and I basically said, like, they should not have let Jimmy Crute go out. Sorry, they should not have let Jake Matthews go out there and fight a full fight after literally just thinking he had won. He had celebrated the win. And not only he had celebrated the win, but like he had adrenaline dumped. You know, he had adrenaline dumped because that's what you do when you think you got a win. So... I'll show you my tweet here and you can tell me if you agree with me, boys, because to be honest, I don't really see how you can't agree with me. I mean, if in my eyes, this was clear as day. You know, in my eyes, this was clear as day. I mean, Jake Matthews submitted Neil Magny in round one. Now, you're going to say, James, he didn't actually submit him. I agree, he didn't submit him. But the ref didn't agree. In the ref's eyes, he submitted him, right? By the way, this is my X channel. Go and follow me on there. I got a lot of a lot of content I put out on there. But yeah, Jake Matthews was told by the referee that you won the fight via submission, right? Now, Neil Magny didn't tap. The fight shouldn't have been stopped. It was a bad decision by the referee, right? Bad decision. But it was an even worse decision to then change your mind and continue a fight after you just called the fight to be stopped. It's not fair on Jake Matthews. Now, you might say it's not fair on Neil Magny. No, but that is what happened. You can't reverse a decision just because it's not fair, right? You can't do that. They didn't do it to Jake. It's not fair that Jake had to go out there and fight and then got finished in round 3. Are you going to reverse that decision because it wasn't fair? No. So just because Neil Magny didn't tap out and so it wasn't fair to stop the fight, the call was made. Once the call is made, you shouldn't be able to reverse it because it's not fair on Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews then goes to celebrate, right? He 41, he celebrated, he started jumping up and down. You have a big adrenaline dump, right? And then you have to go out there and fight 10 more minutes with someone like Neil Magny, who's got elite cardio and who was ready to go, who didn't have an adrenaline dump, who was still complaining, you know, who never really accepted the fight was over, whereas Jake did. Like, that's not fair, man. And like I wrote here, Jake Matthews should not have had to go out there and fight again after thinking he won, celebrating and adrenaline dumping. Ridiculous. It was a ridiculous shout. And I mean, see, we got lots of comments here, lots of likes, lots of views. I mean, this thing's going semi-viral here. And part of the reason is because all of the parlay boys will be commenting saying they agree, you know, but even if you didn't bet on it, like, you can't just change. You can't just change the results like that. And the only argument that I could see, and I'd like you to let me know in the comments, because I will have a look and I'll try and respond. But the only real argument you can say is like, oh, Neil Magny didn't tap, so it's not fair to stop the fight. And yes, that part is true. Neil Magny didn't tap, so it's not fair to stop the fight. Yeah, that's true. But the fight was stopped. So you can't restart it again. It's not in the rules to restart it again, right? So that, since the fight was stopped, it overrides the fairness factor on Neil Magny. And also, if you're saying it's out of fairness that the fight should have been restarted, where's the fairness to Jake? Where's the fairness to Jake after celebrating the win, adrenaline dumping, cardio dumping? Like, there's no fairness to Jake. So you can't really use fairness as an argument, because you're only giving fairness to one fighter and you're taking all of the fairness away from Jake Matthews. Unfortunately, the ref made a fuck up. We just have to live with that. We can't take a win away from Jake Matthews in the heat of the moment. It's ridiculous. So I didn't bet on Jake, by the way. 0 bets on Jake. I wasn't going to play Jake at minus 500 odds. That's ridiculous. You know, there's just no point in that. There's no need for that. So I didn't bet on him at all. And you've seen my stats, boys. I showed you my stats here. These are all my bets for today. And by the way, I'm third-party track, so you can see every bet I've ever made, win or loss, for 6 years since I started. 6 years, win or loss. You can see all of the embarrassing bets I've made. The worst bets in the world. 3 units on a minus 400 favorite and he gets finished in round 1. Like, the worst bets I've ever made, you can see. You can also see the good bets I made. I track everything on a third party where I cannot edit my bets. This record is here forever, whether I like it or not, right? Once the bet is locked in, I can't change anything. 99.9% of these fraudsters online, they don't track their bets like me. Why do I track my bets? Because I'm a professional and I have nothing to hide. I'm actually winning money week after week, so I don't need to hide anything. But I didn't bet on Jake Matthews. As you can see here, the money line bets were here. The props and parlays were here. There's no Jake Matthews to be seen. There's no Jake Matthews money line. There's no prop. There's no over. There's no under. But even though I didn't have a bet on it, I am still confident in saying that was a terrible, terrible decision to restart that fight. So, look, well done to Neil Magny, because he didn't tap and he continued fighting and he got the win. So there's nothing on Neil Magny, but it's very unfortunate for Jake Matthews to lose in his home city, home country like that. It's very unfortunate. Next fight, we had Tom Nolan versus Charlie Campbell. And man, this was a sad one for me, man, because Charlie Campbell is someone I consider a friend. He's a good guy. You know, I've spent time with him out there in Las Vegas, and it was very hard to see him lose. You know, he came out there and he swung heavy lever. He went out on his shield like he always does. The mother effing cannibal. He will be back. He flew all the way to Australia in Tom Nolan's home country. A 17-hour flight or something like that, on 2 or 3 weeks' notice on something like that. And I'm telling you now, Charlie did not come into that fight without injuries. I'm telling you that now. He may not say it, and I didn't say it before the fight because I have respect for Charlie. And I don't even know how much I can say after the fight because I have respect for Charlie, and I don't want to come out and make excuses for him because he ain't that guy. And you know he ain't that guy because he made a video right after it apologizing for losing, which he doesn't need to do, and he didn't mention any injuries. But I'm telling you now, he had injuries going into that. I'm not talking about just like random injuries. Like, he wasn't fit going into that fight. I know that for a fact. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. It's not hearsay. He didn't message me. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. So for him to get in there and bring it to Tom Nolan, nothing but respect for Charlie Campbell, man. He's a G, bro. Charlie Campbell's a G. And man, I thought he had it at one point. He dropped Tom Nolan. And I thought he had the win. I thought he was going to finish him. And Charlie, you know, he started brawling. He started going crazy like he always does. And it seemed like he was just a little bit too casual when Tom Nolan, you know, took his back. Tom Nolan, I can't remember the exact sequence. Maybe it's like a body lock type of like lifted him up, put him down or something. I remember he got that one hook in, but I don't remember the exact sequence before that. But I remember when he got his hook in, Charlie just looked a little bit lethargic, you know. He wasn't fast to react. And Tom Nolan was way faster, and he just was able to put his arm underneath his chin and connect the rear naked choke, you know. I felt like Charlie should have been just a little bit more aware in that position. As soon as Tom Nolan got one hook in, you need to start defending your neck or tucking your chin. Charlie was kind of just like chilling, He seemed like he didn't really care, and that was his downfall in that one. But man, it was a tough task flying across the world with injuries and going there against someone like Tom Nolan, who's on a great streak and a very good prospect in the division. So yeah, I mean, shout out to both fighters. Obviously, that was a war. That was a great fight, a great 1 round fight, one of the best 1 round fights of 2025. I would say for sure. But yeah, man, Charlie will be back. Charlie will be back, and he will be back on a full camp, not flying across the world, fighting in Las Vegas, no injuries, full camp, training for someone who he's gonna fight. Like, he's gonna be back, and he'll probably get a knockout in his next fight, man. Charlie's slick with it. Charlie is slick with it. I'll tell you that now. The next fight is Navajo Stirling versus Rodolfo Bellato, and this is Hammer of the Week. If you guys know, every single week I do a video on my YouTube channel called Hammer of the Week, where I give you one of the most confident spots on the entire card. I gave you Navajo Stirling this week, and he cashed 30-27 on 2 judges' scorecards, I believe it was, and 129-28. And yeah, man, it was a good performance by Navajo Stirling. Again, he goes through some type of adversity where he looks to tire out at the end of round 2, cleanly winning round 1 and round 2. He looks to tire out at the end of round 2, and then still comes back and potentially wins round 3. And I believe he won round 3 on 2 judges' scorecards. I'm going to have to double check that. But so what should I type in? I'll type in Bellato scorecards. So yeah, actually, the most impressive... Why is it not coming up? Yeah, the most impressive thing to me about Navajo Stirling's performance here. Yes, so he did. Yep. So he got 2 30-27s and a 29-28. So yeah. So he won 30-27 on the judges' scorecards, right? Because 2 out of 3. So one of the most impressive things to me about Navajo Stirling's performance in this fight was that he looked hella gassed at the end of round 2. I thought that he may get beat up in round 3. I thought that he might get taken down. I thought that, Rodolfo Bellato might start to push the pace and pressure. And he actually ended up winning round 3 on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards. So he dogged it out, a tough fight where someone wouldn't go away. Rodolfo's chin looked immaculate for the first time ever. Now, his chin and recoverability does always look decent, to be honest. But what I meant is, for the first time ever, he just doesn't really get hurt. Rodolfo didn't get hurt in the entire fight. I think the last 30 seconds, Navajo caught him with something. I think Rodolfo was spinning. Well, I know Rodolfo was spinning, and then Navajo caught him with something, and I think it hurt him. But that was kind of like a random one because Rodolfo was just pressuring crazy, and he didn't get hurt that badly. I mean, you go back and look at Rodolfo's career. The guy's got hurt in every single fight he's ever fought in the UFC, including 1 out of 2 Dana White's Contender Series fights. So it's like, this guy loves getting hurt, and he didn't really get hurt in that fight. So that was actually pretty impressive. Navajo hit him with a brutal knockout blow. I believe it was round 2 or round 3, where Bellato was just like, yeah, go on, punch me in the face as hard as you can. Navajo just sat down on a punishing right straight, and Rodolfo just ate it easily. I was very surprised at Rodolfo's chin in this one. Navajo's will get a KO soon, boys. Trust me. Navajo's KO is coming. I know Navajo's not really that rated on a lot of people's radars now. I mean, I'm seeing some of the tweets and stuff, and people are thinking Navajo's not great and stuff. May I remind you of someone that we now call potential light heavyweight champion, Carlos Ulberg. May I remind you about his fight against Kennedy and Nzechukwu, where he got finished in round 2? May I remind you about that fight? May I remind you about the fight against Fabio Chiron, which was a very low volume, boring fight? May I remind you about those 2 fights from Carlos Ulberg? May I remind you about the Daeun Jung fight, where not too much is happening. Carlos is not putting on the best performance of all time. May I remind you of the fight with Jan Blachowicz, where a lot of people score the fight for Jan Blachowicz. Navajo Stirling is young in his career. He's 27 years old at light heavyweight, which is extremely young. And I think that he has a bright future ahead of him. Navajo Stirling could be the goods. We just haven't had full confirmation of it yet because he's so early in his career. He was born in 1997, lads. 27 is extremely young. 8-0. 8-0 and 27 years old. That's extremely young for light heavyweight. So let's cut the kids some slack. Let's relax a little bit and not go over the top about these performances where he's winning 30-27, where he's almost knocking out guys like Tokos and Ivan Erslan. Let's give him some slack there because he's winning the fights cleanly. There's no argument for him to lose. So yes, okay, maybe he's not getting the knockouts that you guys want to see, or that like Carlos got today, or maybe Carlos got in a couple of his earlier fights coming up in the ranks, you know, against Tafon, etc., and Alonzo Menafield. But just give him some time. Give him some time to develop. He's very green. And let's see what he can be. I don't even know if I want that Jimmy Crute fight for him, because do we really want to give him do we really want to give him a fight against a very good and very experienced grappler? I feel like we don't need to do that yet. Obviously, I'd like to see it. If both fighters want it, then, you know, who am I to say no? But I'd say pump the brakes on that specifically for now. Give Navajo a couple more fights like Bellato, you know, some of these guys. And yeah, I think he can do big things in the light heavyweight division. Cam Rowston. Let's speak about Cam. Made Andre Petroski look like a bum. Dropped Andre Petroski with a beautiful fade back, step back left hook, a check hook, dropped him to his knees, finished him shortly after. Some brutal elbows from top position. He also hurt him badly with a body kick. Just clearly outstruck him. Was just levels and levels above Andre Petroski on the feet. You know, Petroski, good grappler, but he was just in and out. He was out of his depth on the feet. You know, he was just out of his depth. And Cam Rowston had those long-range weapons, those good teeps up the middle that were landing a little bit. That beautiful body kick that I thought could lead to a KO at one point. That beautiful body kick that really, really hurt Andre Petroski and brought his arms down. And then Andre Petroski just, you know, he's a wrestler, man. So he's an all right striker, but this guy's a wrestler. He doesn't have understanding of the striking game. And Cam Rowston is a grappler as well to some degree, but he has a lot more understanding of the striking game than someone like Andre Petroski coming out of City Kickboxing, a very high-level striking gym. And we saw that Cam Rowston step back, left hook, and that was all she wrote. It might have been a right hook. I believe it was a left hook from the top of my head, and that was all she wrote, boys. Shout out to Cam Rowston, the Battle Giraffe. We cashed on his KO plus 500 because we bet him. We bet Cam Rowston KO and Allberg KO at a plus 1,100, plus 1,100, plus 1,000 cash on Parlay Madness, which is my weekly parlay live stream that I have on this very YouTube channel. So one thing I do want to say, boys, is that it costs zero money. It costs a bit of money to sign up to my service, right? But it costs zero money to subscribe to me. Actually, to be honest, it costs zero money to sign up to my service, because if you do sign up, you're going to win money. So actually, you earn money, not pay money to sign up to my service, right? But initially, right, just to get the access, you have to pay. But then you get all the money back, right? But the access is paid. You know what is free? Click, going right now, scrolling down, scrolling just like this, and click. Just click one button like that. You just click one button and you subscribe to me, because over 50% of people are not subscribed to me yet. So yeah, I'd very much appreciate that, boys. It shows you that you want to continue seeing my content. You want me to continue putting money in your pocket like I do every single week. Jamie Malaki versus Rolando Bedoya. Yeah, Rolando Bedoya needs to get out of the UFC now. You know, at the end of the day, he's 0-4. You know, there's no disrespect. I think you guys know who I am. You know, and I think you guys know I don't disrespect fighters like that. You know, I have the utmost respect for UFC level fighters, because it's not easy to make that walk, and it's definitely not easy to make it to that level of MMA. You know, people watch UFC and they think these guys are not good, but man, like most gyms, the best person in your gym is going to get slumped by any UFC fighter. That's just how it goes, right? Most gyms. So I have the utmost respect for someone like Rolando Bedoya, but what I will say is 0-4 in the UFC, and he deserves to be given his marching papers. He deserves to be sacked from the UFC now. You can't go 0-4 and get another fight. He ain't going to get a fifth fight. Why? There's no reason to give him another fight. It's not like he's got a massive fan base. It's not like he's extremely exciting. I feel like it's crazy because he's lost 4 of his UFC fights. I still feel like he can get UFC wins. I mean, arguably, he beat Chaos Williams. He was kind of close to a finish in round 3. If some of the dynamic, you know, the round 2, end of round 2, the tides were changing. If some slight sequences change, he wins 29-28 today. He clearly won round 3. It's like, I feel like Rolando can get a UFC win, but it doesn't matter what I feel like, because he hasn't done it. He's 0-4 out of the UFC. Jamie Malarkey, on the other hand, Shout out to Jamie Malarkey. He's very skillful, man. I think a lot of people look at Jamie Malarkey and be like, oh, this guy is just a bit of a brawler. He's a bit of a reckless guy. He's got a dodgy chin. He just takes punishment. He's actually a very technical striker, extremely good boxer, great 1-2s, hooks, very good wrestler, good jiu-jitsu, good cardio. I know he looked very tired today because he's never wrestled that much, but he does have good cardio usually. So, I mean, yeah, like the good heart, everything basically, like good mind, um, good fight IQ. Like the guy is just fucking good everywhere. He's a very good MMA fighter. He won the first 2 rounds clean. He did tire out there. I feel like Jamie Malarkey maybe is not what he once was, but he just still had enough to beat Rolando Bordoya in this one. The next fight, Colby Thickness versus Josias Masasa. Yeah, this one was interesting, boys. This was a tale of two fights, and this is why MMA is so crazy, because Musasa was beating his ass on the feet. He was making him look like a baby, and Colby was beating Musasa's ass on the feet, and he was making him look like a baby, and to be honest, even worse. Like the level gap on the ground was actually worse than the level gap on the feet, which is saying something, because the level gap on the feet was extremely huge. I mean, Masasa was, like I said, was beating his ass. And it was crazy, man, because Colby won the fight on 2 takedowns, but he shot about 15. He shot 15 takedowns and could only get 2. Musasa has very good takedown defense. Honestly, Musasa is 0-2 now in the UFC against 2 guys who didn't have any UFC wins prior, and they're not UFC veterans. They're not very high-level fighters in general, and now he's lost against both of them. But I still think that Musasa has pretty big upside in the division. Like, I actually believe that Musasa, after a couple of years more training, he needs to train the ground game, obviously, could be extremely good. Musasa, to me, is kind of similar to like Atiba Gautier. It's just that he doesn't have nowhere near the knockout power because he's fighting in the bantamweight division, so he's just not going to get those knockouts like Gautier is. Now, I do think Gautier is a higher level striker than him as well, much higher level, to be honest. But I guess I'm talking about the power, pound for pound. I'm talking about the physicality. I'm talking about their athleticism, and I'm talking about just the rawness. The rawness is a massive thing because they both got 0 ground game. They're both white belts, So it's crazy to be a white belt in the UFC, by the way. But yeah, they're both white belts. So they actually remind me similarly of each other. If Musasa was a middleweight like Gautier, Musasa would have won his first 2 fights because Musasa would have landed a knockout against Colby and probably Carlos. Maybe not Carlos because he was bouncing about, but definitely Colby. He just happened to be born really small and a bantamweight, But I actually think this guy has upside in the division. He just needs to go back and maybe take a year or 2 off. Like, honestly, like, you speak to the UFC, say, look, UFC, man, like, I want to take a couple of years off. He's only 26, man. He's a young kid. He needs to go to the UFC, in my opinion. And he says, look, UFC, I appreciate you signing me, but I want to take 1 to 2 years off because I'm a white belt. And, fighting Carlos Vera and Colby Thickness at the UFC level has taught me that I can't be a white belt if I want to win at this level, at bantamweight specifically. You might be able to be a white belt at heavyweight, but you can't be a white belt at bantamweight because you're just not going to get the knockouts as often because everyone's smaller. So, you don't have as much power. And if you ain't going to get the knockouts often, you're going to go to decision more. And that means there's more time for someone to take you down. You know what I mean? Francis Ngannou can be a white belt because most of his fights are going to last 30 seconds and never go to the ground. But at bantamweight, if Ngannou was at bantamweight, at some point he's getting taken down, because that's what happens at bantamweight. The fight's going to go longer, more variance is going to happen, more things are going to happen in MMA, and a big part of MMA is the ground game. So you can't avoid the ground game at bantamweight. So what I will say is that he should go to the UFC and be like, I want to go away for 1 or 2 years and just basically just roll every single day. Get your purple belt in 2 years, just literally training every single day. And yeah, because obviously, he's a white belt, but he's not. He's done jiu-jitsu before, so I feel like he could reach purple belt in 2 years if he just trains it every single day. And when I say every day, I mean like 5-6 days a week, man. I really do mean it, every single day. Because at the end of the day, he's not going to forget how to strike. His takedown defense is really, really good as well. So yeah, he just needs to basically get better at jiu-jitsu. It's really as simple as that. You don't need to overcomplicate it. Colby Thickness, man, he's a dog. He's a grinder. He's a gritty fighter. He's a dog. Shout out to him. Not too much to say about Colby Thickness, man. I'm happy he won. He's Volk's boy, so I love Volk, so he's my boy. I'm happy he won in front of his friends and family. He's got great heart, man. He came through big adversity in that fight, and he was able to dog out the win. So very, very good heart for Colby Thickness. It's funny though, because if these guys rematch in 3 years, I think Musasa knocks him unconscious. I really do. That's just my personal opinion, man. There's no hate to Colby if this ever gets back to him. I just have to make an opinion as an analyst. One thing I will say is that that will only happen if Musasa does what I said and trains grappling for 2 years straight. You know, if he doesn't do that, Colby will fucking probably submit him. Michelle Montague versus Luana Carolina. Shout out to my girl, Michelle Montague. She's a bad bitch, man. She's a bad bitch because multiple times, you know, she came through some adversity, or like I remember she got hurt in round 2. She got wobbled there. I remember her Abby Montez fight. She got hurt to the body. I remember when she got kicked in the head when she was a grounded opponent. And then the ref didn't give her back her position, which was absolutely criminal. Like, and she got cut massively. Like, that's 4 I just mentioned. She's come through some big adversity in a young 7-0 career, and she's passed it with flying colors to some. Maybe not flying colors, you know, because there's been some red flags there, but she's passed it. You know, she's like a Kiwi Kayla Harrison, Kiwi Kayla. You know, just like not as good. You know, just like way lower level, but she just needs to get better. She just needs to improve. How old is Michelle Montague? And man, the strength advantage and the size advantage was massively apparent here. So she's 31, so it ain't like she's got that much time. But man, she's still improving. She's out there with Kayla Harrison, America top team. Honestly, she's so dangerous that she could, I think she could go far in a division. I mean, I'm not going to lie, boys. I think everyone's going to try and fade her and bet against her. And I think everyone's going to be pissed off because I think a lot of people are going to lose money. Now, of course, there are fighters that you can fade her against. I'm just going to see the Bantamweight rankings for women's because I want to see if she could get herself into the rankings with another fight. Because to be honest, boys, one thing I'll say is that the women's divisions, they're pretty bleak, man. It's not that hard to get into the rankings. But I'm a Michelle Montague fan. I bet on her, so maybe that's why. But she's Kiwi, so that's why as well. I always support the Kiwis, of course. I have respect for the place that I live. You know, I live on a code of morals and respect. So I always support these Kiwi fighters. You know, money is money. You know, if I have to bet on against someone, I will, unless I know them like Brando. But yeah, we got Kayla Harrison, who's the champion, who's our main training partner. So who could she beat in this division? Misha Tate would be a funny fight. I really don't know about that one. She could definitely beat Daria Zeleznikova. Daria Zeleznikova is ranked. God damn, mate. So I think she could beat Daria. She could probably beat Nora because she's just a much better grappler than her, and Nora's going to try and grapple. She could beat Yana. Yeah, she could beat a lot of these girls, man. So already, I think that she could beat some of these girls. So yeah, I think Michelle's gonna get a couple of fights. Like I think Michelle might get. I don't know. I could see Michelle getting Nora, and then people betting on Nora at Pick'em or something, and then Michelle just fucking buzzsaws through a round 1 finish. I could see Michelle getting like Yana Santos. I reckon they might give her Yana and try to build her up. Yana's fighting someone though, isn't she? Or is that Tate? Pretty sure Yana's fighting someone because I taped her the other day. Yeah, I did. Who did I tape her? Yeah, she is fighting. She's fighting Macy Chason. So where's Macy? Macy's 5. Yeah, so I'd be interested to see if Macy beats Nora and then if Macy beats Yana, then they could give Yana to Michelle. That would be good because they're fighting, 1 week after each other. So the timeline works out. And if Yana beats Macy, then they give Macy. Then they give Yana to Michelle. Then Michelle beats her. Now she's in the top 5. Like, that's crazy, bro. That's how UFC Bantamweight's women MMA is. But, yeah, I feel like Michelle will go through Yana. And I feel like people would bet Yana at, like, plus 170s, plus 160s. I think Michelle could probably beat some of these other girls who maybe I don't think she would beat as well. She's not a very good striker, and she doesn't have great wrestling, but she's extremely tenacious. She's a very tough girl. Very tough girl. She was cut badly today and basically didn't give a shit. So I think she has some upside in the division. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a time to bet against her because her wrestling and striking, What other fights we had on the card? So we had Brando. We got to speak about my man Brando, man. So Brando's my boy. I know him personally, and yeah, he showed out today. Knockout in round one. I knew he would get a knockout in round one. I bet on him to get a knockout in round one, and it came true. It only took a minute 55 seconds, so I'm very happy for Brando. You know, he's been through a lot, and he deserves this. So yeah, extremely happy for the man. Bulk and Bear. Go and support Bulk and Bear, boys. Do it on behalf of me. He's a good guy, and he's going to be fun. He's got a personality. He's not a boring cunt. He's definitely not a boring fighter. He's electric. Brando's fights are electric. Bet on the under. Bet on it doesn't go to decision in every single Brando fight. And trust me, you're going to be in for a lot of entertainment with the Bulk and Bear for however long he's in the UFC. A lot of entertainment. So, yeah, he's going to get some fights. And Brando's a good fighter, man. You know, he's still raw in MMA. He's only 5-1, but a lot of these CKB guys are raw in MMA. You know, Nav 7-0 now, 8-0 now. Allberg was 4-1 when he got signed. Brando 4-1 when he got signed. You know, a lot of these guys are raw in MMA, but I mean, look at them. I mean, Izzy was semi-raw, not as much as the other guys, but Allberg's fighting for a title soon. Navajo's next in line, you know, after Allberg. So, yeah, I got high hopes for Brando, man. At the end of the day, the heavyweight division doesn't take much to get to the top of the heavyweight division. So, yeah, we cashed on Brando, as always. How could I not bet on the Bulk and Bear? We cashed Perisic KO round one. And we also bet on his money line there. 3 units to return 1.76. Way before the line movement, because, you know, we smashed line movement. So, yeah, Alexia Tayanara versus Loma Lookboonmee. We cashed on Alexia here. This was an easy bet. One of the easiest ones of the entire card, to be honest. As you can see here. By the way, I didn't really mention it. I didn't mention it all, but Michelle Montague beat the piss out of Luana Carolina. 30-25 on one judge's scorecard. That's 30-26. And then minus the point deduction. But goddamn, Michelle Montague had a chance for 2 10-8 rounds there. Completely dominated Carolina. Brutalized her. Like, shout out to Michelle. Alexi Tayanara didn't brutalize Loma as much, but she did take her down, did dominate her from top position, and just made it look easy, just way too physical. Some of the takedowns that Alexia Tayanara was throwing was like, I didn't think they looked that good, you know, but she was just doing them because she was just so much stronger. So, yeah, man, that was a great card, boys. One thing I will say is that that's another winning event for us. We're on a 7-week win streak. And, yeah, if you want to sign up, click the link in my bio. I've got a max play out for next week. My max play has a 90% hit rate. I've won 40 of them and lost only 5 in my career. You're listening to that, boys. 40 wins and 5 losses. So the first bets for next week's UFC 320 pay-per-view are already out and up on my website. And you can get them right this second by hitting the link in my bio, clicking sublaunch.com/lucrativemma, and you literally can get my max bet and my big bet right now. I have 2 of them. I have 2 massive bets, 1 max bet, 1 big bet. They're up right now. Like I said, tracked numbers, verified. I'm up over 140 units this year. I'm so much richer now than I was 6 months ago just from betting on MMA, and I get to watch my favorite sport every single week as well. I'm living the absolute dream, boys. But that's it, boys. I'm out now. Peace out. Love, respect. See you in the next video.